veto spree turns Polish presidency into a rival government at Ukraine's expense, because there's been a project. Probably most of you don't know. Okay, probably most of you do know that Poland has accepted many refugees from Ukraine. That is a well-known fact. That is not something that is exactly hidden. It's not secret knowledge that Poland, as the right next door neighbor to Ukraine, has accepted at the beginning of the war, especially a lot of Ukrainian refugees. And with that came certain privileges that Ukrainian people seeking refuge have been given. These were giving a certain specific number, assigning a specific number that all Polish citizens have to Ukrainian people, giving them a simplified path to finding employment or starting a business, access to Polish social benefits, social umbrellas, such as additional money for every single child that one has, access to healthcare. In fact, as I remember, many medical facilities have actually opened sections entirely dedicated to Ukrainian people. I remember that I needed to do something at the doctor's office. I would go to the doctor's office and they would tell me, oh no, this section that you came to, that's for Ukrainian people. You have to go somewhere else. So that was a thing. And I actually still think that it's a positive thing. And with time, those sort of social benefits would be prolonged, would be extended. And with time, it would become a political issue, because increasingly politicians would say that they will take away those benefits, they will restrict more those benefits, It became, especially after the Law and Justice lost the parliamentary elections at the end of 2023, it became a big source of political discussion between Law and Justice and the ruling Civic Coalition. And of course, the currently elected Law and Justice President Nawrocki which is the topic of the segment right now, vetoed a bill to support Ukrainian people that would continue those benefits, those social benefits. And more importantly, it also threatens continued Polish financing of Starlinks used in Ukraine. The little dishes that you can just point to the sky and have the internet. And that is significant because Poland, as far as I understand, is one of the biggest backers, the biggest financiers when it comes to Ukrainian Starlink. So that would deprive a lot of places in Ukraine of having internet. So this is where we are. That is the political situation that we have found ourselves in. And all this in the context of Mr. Nawrocki saying that Ukrainian people are treated better in Poland than Polish citizens, which is a nonsensical claim, not really supported by anything. And completely overlooking the fact, something that I have mentioned earlier during the stream, that Ukrainian people put into the economy a lot more than they take out. And to be quite honest with you, Poland should be really grateful that Ukrainian people are here. In fact, the contribution of Ukrainian people, as far as my research has gone, is so big. The contribution to the economy by Ukrainian people is so big that the social benefits could be extended to even those Ukrainian people that do not work, and still the inflow into the economy would be bigger than what Ukrainian people would be taking out of the social benefits. That is a fact that people overlook. And I'm not even going to address the whole argument of Ukrainian people are not grateful for Poland's help, because that is just ridiculous on its face. In just a few weeks since his swearing in, Karol Nawrocki has shown what he wants the Polish presidency to be, with Ukrainians so far paying the heaviest price. And that is absolutely the case. There has been a conversation all day today. I have been following the Polish media all day today. The anti-Ukrainian sentiment is real, even though not so long ago, Karol Nawrocki has written a very heartfelt letter for the Independence Day in Ukraine. He waxed poetics on how Poland stands firmly with Ukraine, how we are friends, we are your allies, we are with you. And then immediately he turns around and screws Ukraine over in a really horrible way. He has already used a string of vetoes, told ministers they should clear bills with him before they even reach parliament, and talked about writing a new constitution to give the head of state far more power, which I have a personal beef. Apart from this being a very bad idea in general, I think this is a very bad idea to change the constitution. I also have a very personal beef with it. It adds up to an attempt to turn the president into a parallel prime minister. The impact of this latest veto on a bill regulating assistance for Ukrainians is already clear. Poland, once held up as an example for how it welcomed millions of Ukrainians in 2022, is now on course to take away their legal protections, work permits, and benefits, which will, of course, negatively impact Polish economy, which is this is idiotic move to take away Ukrainian people's ability to legally seek employment. None of this is about serving Poles. It is about making life harder for the government and driving polarization. I agree with that. And nobody can convince me that there is some real social legitimate reason for having this sort of thing. Nobody can convince me of that. It is ridiculous. It is just stupid on its face. It is just silly on its face. Vetoes and threats. Nawrocki did not wait long to wield his veto pen. In less than 3 weeks, he has rejected 4 major laws and attached warnings to every move of the government. What stands out is not only what he blocked, but how he used each veto as a lever to claim authority. The first target was the windmill law, a government package to erase restrictions on the wind power development. But let me get more into the Ukrainian. There you go. From ally to obstacle. The most consequential veto came against the Ukrainian aid bill. This law would have extended the special act passed in 2022 that gave refugees simplified residency, access to welfare payouts, the labor market, healthcare, and schooling. I think I don't have to explain why Russia is actually very happy with this. Russia has actually openly praised Nawrocki for doing this, which already should tell you that this is a horrible thing to do. If Russia openly praises something that you do, you should take a step back, really think about it, pause what you're doing, rethink it again, and seriously considering not doing it. It also included safeguards against abuse of benefits and extended temporary protection until March 2026. Nawrocki threw it out, insisting that the so-called 800 plus benefits should only be given to refugees who undertake the obligation to work, which is nonsense. I don't agree with this at all. There are people that have, for example, been very recently fired and they still need those benefits because they still have children. There are people that are disabled parents, Ukrainian disabled parents. They have children, they run away from war, and they deserve those benefits as well. There are many situations in which people simply do not have the means to work and in order to gain these benefits. And again, Ukrainian people put into Polish economy enough that it should be no problem for the Polish government to grant these benefits to everybody, regardless of them working or not, because Ukrainian people still, at large, put into the economy much more than taking out. Just keep that in mind always when hearing arguments such as, oh, Ukrainian people are treated better than Polish people and only those who work should have those benefits. That is not the case. He added that he would draft his own bill, one that would lengthen the wait for citizenship. That is also a big, very bad move. He would draft a bill that would lengthen the wait for citizenship from 3 to 10 years. In his words, include a clear stop to Bandera by criminalizing Ukrainian nationalist symbols alongside Nazi and Soviet emblems. And I just don't know what the point of this is, especially now. I think it's ridiculous. I think it's ridiculous to tie such historical issues to the welfare and well-being of refugees. I think it's a scummy thing to do, quite frankly. And of course, lengthening the path to citizenship is also, frankly, a bizarre and completely, I have no clue what is the benefit of doing this. What the Ukraine veto means. Poland's response to the Russian invasion of Ukraine in 2022 was praised across Europe as exemplary. Well, not anymore. Definitely not anymore. Law and Justice screwed it over with the whole grain scandal. And now Nawrocki is trying to screw over that image even more with his current veto. Within weeks, the Sejm or lower house passed a special law that gave Ukrainian refugees simplified residency, access to healthcare and schooling, and the right to work without burdensome labor permit procedures, which is a big deal, trust me. I have helped out a legal firm, a law practice that organizes legalization of stay for foreigners, and trust me, getting a labor permit is a big hurdle, and it is a big deal. For 3 years, it has kept more than 1 million Ukrainians legal and employed, while sustaining Poland's labor market. Nawrocki's veto of the new extension bill breaks that. The law would have prolonged protection until March 2026 and tightened criteria to prevent abuse of the welfare system. But without it, the entire structure now collapses. The effects are concrete. From October, hundreds of thousands of Ukrainians risk falling into legal limbo. As their residency papers expire, regional governors' offices already overwhelmed would be forced to process up to 1 million new applications under normal procedures that take months to even years. Employers who had to simply notify the labor office of hiring Ukrainians will once again need to formal work permits. I don't think this needs an extensive commentary on why this is bad for everybody involved, why this is a horrible idea, and why this is just a bid to fight against the current government that is in charge. That is the only reason. Why Nawrocki killed the bill? At the heart of the clash was the child benefit known as 800+. The government's bill kept payments for all under 18 Ukrainians enrolled in Polish schools, universities, or vocational courses, regardless of whether their parents were employed. Nawrocki rejected this, declaring that benefits should go only to families where parents are in legal work. He said 800+ should only be given to refugees who undertake the obligation to work, presenting it as a matter of justice for Poles, which is bullshit. This is such blatant bullshit. He added that Poles in their own state should be treated at least as well as guests, which echoes his MAGA-style campaign slogan, Poles First. In place of the government's version, he promised to submit his own law, making benefits conditional on work, lengthening the path to citizenship from 3 to 10 years, and criminalizing Bandera symbols, equating them with Nazi or Soviet emblems. And already there are several organizations that house refugees from Ukraine, several organizations that organize housing for them, that have pointed out that there are people that simply cannot work. They physically cannot work, and they still deserve those benefits. So just because of that, the video is ridiculous, and the idea for the new bill is equally ridiculous. And of course, we still have to talk about the Law and Justice Party endangering. There's a whole other aspect to this. Now we're just talking about the benefits aspect. So let's see. The burden myth. The argument that Ukrainian refugees drain public resources does not stand up to the numbers. According to the 2024 Deloitte and UNHCR study, Ukrainians generated around 2.7% of Poland's GDP, and that is a lot. Employment surveys cited by Newsweek Polska shows that between 70% and 80% of adult Ukrainians in Poland are in work, essentially the same rate as among Poles. Economists from The BGK Bank estimated their net contribution to the state budget as over PLN 15 billion in 2024, even after accounting for social transfers such as 800 plus child benefit. This is exactly what I'm saying, that this benefit should be granted to all Ukrainian people in Poland, regardless of their employment status, because of this contribution to the GDP. This is a no-brainer. This is such a no-brainer. Beyond Law and Justice and beyond Duda, Nawrocki's stance on Ukraine marks a break even with his own political camp. The right-wing populist Law and Justice Party under Jarosław Kaczynski wrapped itself in the mantle of solidarity in 2022, sending weapons and aid while welcoming refugees in huge numbers. Conservative former head of state Andrzej Duda, whatever else can be said on his presidency, was a visible ally of Volodymyr Zelensky, traveling to Kyiv and lobbying NATO partners for support. Nawrocki has repositioned the presidency as openly skeptical of Ukraine's presence in Poland. Of Ukrainians' presence in Poland. This is not a continuation of Law and Justice's policy, but a step into harder territory, designed to answer the resentments of the far right. In this regard, Nawrocki appears closer to the nationalist libertarian opposition Confederation Party than Law and Justice. And now we will look for, because there's one more aspect to it that I want to touch upon. And that is, of course, Starlink. Starlink. For that, we're going to be jumping here. We all know what Starlink is. We all know what it does. Elon Musk's famous internet. I cannot imagine a better gift for Russia's President Vladimir Putin's troops than cutting off Ukraine from the internet. Polish President Karol Nawrocki on August 25th vetoed a bill that would have extended financial support for Ukrainians fleeing the war, a decision that officials warn will also cut funding for Ukraine's Starlink internet service starting October 1st. This is important. Poland has been supporting Ukraine's internet connection since the start of Russia's full-scale invasion by financial Starlink systems, which are a lifeline for soldiers fighting on the front line. Presidential vetoes are cutting blindly. Karol Nawrocki turns off the internet in Ukraine with his decision, because de facto it means his decision on the law on assistance to Ukraine citizens. Polish Deputy Prime Minister Krzysztof Gawrowski wrote on X, "This is the end of the Starlink internet which Poland provides to Ukraine, which is waging war. This is also the end of support for storing Ukrainian administration data in a safe space." The Polish president's decision to veto the bill means that as of October 1st, Warsaw will not be able to continue paying for Ukraine's Starlink subscription, a spokesperson for Poland Digital Affairs Ministry told TVP Public Television on August 25th. The bill, which President Nawrocki vetoed, entered the period of assistance, meaning this funding from the Ukraine Aid Fund until the end of March next year, Ministry spokesperson Marek Giogrica said. Therefore, there is currently no legal basis for funding this from October 1st. So, yeah. According to Polish outlet Onet, Nawrocki said on August 25th that Poland's strategic interests have not changed, and Russia remains the greatest threat to security, even though this greatly assists Russia. You cannot even imagine. However, after 3.5 years, the situation in terms of financials and social and political emotions has fundamentally changed. The law that was proposed should be corrected today. This is just, I'm gonna say this. This is because Nawrocki is extremely pro-Trump. Pro-Trump is extremely anti-Ukraine, let's be honest. Trump is trying to get as fast a peace deal as possible. He's trying to pressure Ukraine into that peace. And Poland doing at a critical time of the war something like this definitely pushes things in Trump's favor. That is my opinion on the matter. A Ukrainian diplomatic source told the Kyiv Independent that while Ukraine appreciates Poland's past support, equating Ukrainian symbols with Nazi and communist ones risks fueling negative sentiment in Ukrainian society. Nawrocki, a right-wing nationalist backed by the opposition Law and Justice Party, not only won, blah blah blah. We all know the drill. We all know what happened. Alright. So, Poland, from one of the biggest allies to Ukraine is sadly becoming one of the obstacles to Ukraine, especially the Starlink part. Starlink could potentially have big ramifications at the front line as well. So on the front line as well. So we'll just have to see how things develop.